Well, hello and thank you for watching. If you're using timeouts as your main disciplinary action with your children, then you're going to absolutely love this video. My name is Bonnie Leota. My husband and I are authors of Learn to Speak Kid, as well as Raising Healthy, Happy, Cooperative Kids. And I know exactly what it's like to be dragging a screaming, kicking, angry child over to a timeout. Like, no, you don't hit your sister. You need a timeout. But what I found about timeouts after having 4 kids and having that be my main thing, because of course we're not supposed to spank our kids, and I watched a lot of Super Nanny. What I found though is that timeouts aren't positive at all. They're actually very negative, right? They're very reactive. Child does something you don't like, so you tell them, no, don't do that. And we put them in a timeout. You're going into a timeout. But what does timing out a child actually teach them? Because if I told you right now, don't think of a red car. Do not think of a red car. Don't you dare think of a red car. You see, people think in pictures. So the minute that I tell you, don't think of a red car, what is it that you're actually thinking about? It's the red car, right? So when I started learning about creating champions for life, it was all about going from being reactive with punishment and takeaways and timeouts to proactive with training and creating plans ahead of time. So I want to share a story with you about a little guy that Thomas and I met when we were at Roanoke Ranch in Michigan volunteering. We were pre-warned about this little guy. He had been diagnosed with ADHD, ODD, autism, and probably a few more things as well. And we were warned that he was rambunctious, probably going to run everywhere, very defiant child. And so the child shows up with the family, and we were standing there talking, and here's little Alex over by the horses, the horse corral, climbing up on a very old wooden fence. It was like if you jumped on the bottom of the fence too long, it would actually just break and fall off. So we didn't want him up there. And so Mom starts yelling, Alex, get off the fence. And Alex gets off the fence. And 2 minutes later, what did he do? He climbed right back on the fence. And for about 10 to 15 minutes, it was that pattern. Alex, get off the fence. Alex, I'm telling you, I want to tell you one more time. And then she started getting louder, and then she threatened a timeout. I asked permission to actually go talk to Alex for just a minute. And Mom said, okay, but you're going to be wasting your time. And I said, that's okay. I have time. So I went over and I talked to Alex, and I said, Alex, what is the most important thing for you to have happen at the ranch today? Do you want to ride the horses, pet the horses, or feed the horses? Now, I would have totally assumed that he would want to ride the horse. That was going to be his reward at the end of the day, was horseback riding. But what he chose was, I want to feed the horses. So at the end of his visit, he wanted to be able to take some hay in his hand and feed the horse direct. So that was awesome to know what his goal was, because then I could tell him, well, little guys who would like to feed the horses at the end of their journey today are going to keep their feet on the ground. Little guys who would like to not feed the horses, all they have to do is put their feet up on the fence. And then I had him repeat back to me the offer that I made to him, and he repeated it back. And Mom was just shaking her head like, no way this is going to work. No way this is going to work. But we were there for probably about an hour and a half as Alex went up and down and around the side of the corral. Now, when he went around the side of the corral, we could see his feet. We could see the horse. So he couldn't see us. All we could see was his feet. And I'm telling you what, even when Alex couldn't see us, he kept his feet on the ground the entire time. In fact, he was cooperative, happy, outgoing, and loving the entire day. We never saw one outburst or anything. So that's an example of being proactive, focusing on what does the child want to have happen at the end of the day? What is the child's goal? Hi, Holly. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for visiting me here today. Love it. The problem is, I can tell you this. Okay, I'm going to be proactive, and I'm going to tell my child exactly what I want from them ahead of time, even though I know it's easy to say or think that you don't know what's going to happen. But once something happens, then you can put that down on a piece of paper or in a journal or something and say, okay, this happened. It may happen again next time. What would be a great parent-approved plan I could put in place? But if a train is going down the tracks at 120 miles per hour, how easy is it to stop the momentum of the train? You could put a great big boulder, you could put an apartment building in front of the train, but if you do that, is that going to stop the train in its tracks? And the answer is no, it's going to cause a huge disaster and a huge mess, right? Going from reactive to proactive is just like changing any other habit. So if you've ever tried to change your eating habits, your lifestyle habits, you know how difficult it can be to change habits. In fact, they have support groups and whatnot, don't they? Right. So we understand the transition. We know exactly what you're going to go through as you say, oh, I love creating champions for life. No, I would love to learn to speak kid. I'm going to join in on this philosophy. But your children have habits that they've developed over the years, kicking, screaming, hitting, crying, whatever it is. And you've developed habits over the years. In fact, I believe we can say 2 to 3 generations of our parents, like our generations that are older than us, right? They have also been instilled with habits because you see, it was in 1946 that timeouts were actually invented, I guess, introduced to the public. They called it natty time in Dr. Spock's book, Baby and Child Care. And it was the mid-1950s when the term terrible twos was actually coined into a phrase. Do you see a little bit of correlation there? Timeouts introduced in 1946, and a decade later, the term terrible twos was actually coined into a phrase. So we know what your kids are going to go through during the transition. We know the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings that you're going to go through the transition of going from chaos and disharmony and untrust to peace and happiness and cooperation with your kids. Because you see, yes, I did want my kids to cooperate. Like, why won't they just listen to me? But I also wanted to build a loving, trusting, close, connected relationship with them so that when they got into life experiences that they didn't really understand, I would be the first person that they would come to. But by always telling them no and what they did wrong and dragging them into a timeout, I had created an enemy. I was their enemy. I was someone that they needed to sneak and hide things from. And that was no good. I didn't like that at all. So knowing what you're going to go through the transition and the support groups that we've got, the audio programs that we have, really help parents make it through to the other side. In fact, I could tell you a dozen stories of families that when they joined us and started working with us, had their kids on medication or were just totally at a loss for what to do. And by working with us and being able to ask us questions and us being able to guide you through the transition and other parents through the transition, they're actually not on medication and they're getting notes home from the school saying how much of a pleasure it is to have these children in class. So yes, you can make the transition. Timeouts are very negative. Child does something negative, parent doesn't like it, which is also a negative energy, drags a child kicking and screaming into a timeout. The child's screaming, sitting there in the timeout, waiting for the buzzer to go off, and they have no idea what they could have done to please you. So thank you for those who have chimed in today. Please chime in. When you see us go live, you can actually request a notification to get notified or to get a message when we go live so that you can join us or join me and Tom and ask us questions anytime you like. Hope you have a great day.